the information is easier, but I think it's harder to find great information. I'm an educator, so I know how to find the information. If there's nothing else I know how to do is research. In my opinion, this is the biggest transfer of wealth in financial history. And if that's going to happen in the Black community, if we're going to be a part of that, we need to start now. We need to have a sense of urgency. We need to earn. We need to buy and save as much Bitcoin as possible, simply because the current financial system hasn't worked for any of us, but it definitely hasn't worked for us. We're talking about over the long term, because of inflation, which affects us all. I believe Bitcoin is a better option. Use what we have to get what we want. We have the ability to help ourselves. We have the ability to be self-sovereign, and for the first time ever, we have a separation of money and state, but we also have the ability to fund ourselves. Like every single movement ever has had to use the banking system, so it always was going to go back to some sort of stop blockage in the way. So we can just skirt around that and just keep it moving.
Today I'm sitting with Isaiah Jackson, otherwise known as Zay. He's a Bitcoin evangelist since 2013, a Bitcoin consultant and the founder of multiple blockchain startups, the host of the popular podcast, Gentlemen of Crypto, the co-founder of the Clubhouse Club, Black Bitcoin Billionaires, which has over 150,000 members and growing, and he is the author of Bitcoin and Black America. Zay, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, brother, man. Good to be here, man.
All right, first question I ask everybody on the show, who are your top 3 favorite rappers of all time?
Right off, Kanye West, Snoop Dogg, and oh man, this is tough. It's always I say Andre 3000.
Andre 3000. You're from the South, right? Louisiana.
I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. So.
Oh, you from Charlotte, North Carolina? Oh, okay. Is that where you're at now?
Yep. I'm in my place. You know, I'm bi-coastal, so I'm on the East Coast now after being on the West Coast.
You told me that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How did you? By the way, we're going to get into this in a minute, but like, how did you meet Lamar? How did you guys get sync up over the years?
Oh man, it was a crazy story. Into 2017, it was euphoric. Everybody was making money. Everybody became millionaires. And I have an email list from a guy called Dr. Boyce Watkins. And he's never discussed Bitcoin. I've sent emails to him for years. I was like, you call yourself a financial guru, you should be talking about Bitcoin. Never got any response. In 2017, boom, he pops up with a cryptocurrency masterclass course or something. I was like, where in the fuck did this come from? Because he's never mentioned it. He even, sent emails that it's fake because, we won't use it. And then here we are. So I was like, who was teaching this class? And it was Lamar. So I didn't know Lamar before that. Saw he was the teacher, saw his background. I was like, okay, good. At least he got somebody who knows what they're talking about. Linked up with him on Facebook because, as you know, he created the biggest, one of the biggest Bitcoin groups in Facebook history on there. And once I, kind of joined up with him, we actually did a show together for, I'd say, a couple months. Every Wednesday we used to get together, the Gentleman Crypto Show, and then him. We get together, talk about stuff, and then just sync from there. And just, became friends and stayed that way for the last 3 years.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't know the origin of that. Yeah, I knew you guys were tight, but I didn't know how that happens. I ask everybody this other question, Zay. I want to know who your top 5 people in your life are. So T-Mobile used to have the top 5, right? 5 people. Take out your family and friends that are close to you, but let's talk about professionally. Who are the 5 people that you have in your life professionally? Because they say you are about the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So right now, definitely Sinclair Skinner. He is who I call a mentor. One of the first Black people I ever saw in Bitcoin that was unapologetic. He did his thing, represents for his community, smart, has his own places around the world, was in Bitcoin in 2012. So he was around, OG, super OG. He's one of those people that's built so many projects in the space. He just kind of mentors now. So him, Lamar Wilson, I would say over the years, being able to build so much together, which we'll talk about more, Black Bitcoin Billionaires, Lamar Wilson. Let's see, who else? Probably say Jack Dorsey. At this point, talking with him, after he said he liked the book, I was like, holy shit, what's going on here? I didn't even know he knew who I was. And then, so cool. Working with Cash App later, getting grants, education grants, even doing an event tomorrow for their idea event. So Jack Dorsey, I would say 4th would be Justin Riedrich, who actually just put out a book, From Bars to Bitcoin. And his story is great. Childhood friend, grew up together, played basketball, and kind of went different ways, linked back up. And he had just got out of prison, and it was kind of hard to find jobs, found Bitcoin, and then took off from there. So he
don't need a job now.
Hey, he's doing great. And I tell people all the time, Bitcoin changes your mindset. He's definitely one, helps me every day. And then last, I would say, again, so many contacts in this industry that help. But I would have to put maybe Mike Novogratz in there, because Novogratz, haven't talked to him as much as I want to, but every time we have, it's been, a great time. I've actually been on his show before, and just his advice of how to move forward and maybe becoming a billionaire at some point. And he owns Bojangles, so we talk a lot about that. Being from North Carolina, but professionally,
I just saw Scaramucci put up a photo of the two of them together, like a selfie on Twitter. Like he's at the SALT conference right now. I literally just saw him like 10 minutes before we got on.
Yeah, absolutely. Him and a lot of the people who have gotten to the space a little bit later, as long as they've learned what they need to learn, they're good money with me, which he has. He's done the work. So shout out to him for the mentorship as well.
Have you? I'd imagine you have, but have you spoken to Michael Saylor? Do you have a relationship with him in any way?
I haven't. The funniest thing,
really?
I haven't spoken to him at all. I've been holding off on it because I'm one of those people that I wanted to be organic. I don't really chase people. I've never actually reached out for interviews ever. So we were at the conference in Miami, me and Justin, who I mentioned earlier. We were walking down the sidewalk and we see this crowd of people. People yelling, "You're the man! You're the greatest!" And we turned. He's literally one person over from us. He's literally I could have reached out and grabbed his shoulder. But I just kept walking beside him. I was just like, one day, he had his body standing right there. He was very accessible. Shout out to him. But I just always think it's better organic. If he hears about me from like multiple people that don't know each other, we'll link up at that point. With Bitcoin, we always cross paths.
I know we don't like heroes and Bitcoin and this and that. I'm not saying he's a hero, but I do think he's done a lot of good for Bitcoin and adoption of Bitcoin for those that don't understand it, particularly those that have money that look up to a guy like that. I don't know. He's been great for Bitcoin, but you never know in the future, right?
Absolutely.
For now, he's been buying Bitcoin like crazy. So he's been orange pilled from Eric. Like I've never seen anybody orange pilled.
Hey, when he said 100 years, I believe him.
Yeah. They're buying a lot of Bitcoin. It's unbelievable. I want to go back to your early years, your early formative years as a kid. Just tell us about your early years, where you grew up. We just heard, but tell us a little bit more about that. Your parents, what did they do for a living? Give us some background, your socioeconomic conditions growing up.
Oh yeah. So I was lower middle class. Had a mother and father. They were married up until I was 12 years old. So the house was, I was the oldest. I had a brother right below me. He was a year younger. And then we had a younger brother come along later, who's 5 years below me. But yeah, 3 boys in the house, of course, ruffling each other up, playing football, basketball, baseball. We played every sport imaginable. And, growing up, very competitive in sports. As competitive as I am in Bitcoin, that's how I used to be in basketball. So growing up, had my stepdad, my mom. My stepdad was he has his insurance company, but early on, he actually had his own business. He sold ties, tops and ties. And funny enough, he sold a tie to my now father-in-law, or soon-to-be father-in-law, back in Charlotte, back in the 80s, yeah. Back in the day. So, yeah, he was selling ties. But then he got to insurance. He's been doing that for the last 40 years, started his own company. And my mom was a teacher, which I always tell people where I grew up at, it was pretty rough. There were a lot of things that could have pulled you, different directions. But my mom was a teacher, so we couldn't get away with shit. If you did not do good in school, you can't embarrass her because she's a teacher. If her kids are not getting good grades, you know what's going on. And then we couldn't, do anything unless we had A's and B's. So shout out to her. She taught us the English language very early, kept us on track, and taught us, not only, ways to be smart, but how to navigate school. Because there's certain things you can do to make it a little bit easier. And she definitely helped with that. So that's how I grew up. And my life was basically basketball and church because they were big church people. I'm not religious myself now, but man, my mom is like a super Jesus warrior. And then my dad played the piano. So it was at church every day, played basketball every day.
So you just talked about teaching, right? Your mom was a teacher, but you also you were a teacher too, right? So in your book, the first page of the book, you talk about how as a teacher, you were only making $2,600 a month. And I love the line you said, you described it as, I was making enough money to be considered broke, right? Which is funny because it's like technically poverty almost. And so much so that you had to have a roommate where you lived. And he was an investment banker, and he's the one that introduced you to Bitcoin for the first time. Most people, when they hear about the first time, I think American Coddle says there's 3 touches it takes to get Bitcoin, right? There's that first touch, you're introduced to it. Then there's another touch, you're like, damn, I kind of missed it. And then the third touch, you're like, I got to get in, But you got it early with this guy. What was it that clicked? Like something clicked for you. What was that?
Oh yeah. Well, I always say people that are early adopters usually were one of two people. They were either too rich to care if they lost the money, or too broke to care because we're already broke.
You're broke anyway.
What's the worst that can happen? You know what I'm gonna do? Go back to being broke? I'm already there. So I was on that end of the spectrum. Yeah, and again, I looked at it from a money standpoint. I did all the philosophical stuff that came later.
That comes later.
And I do think that sort of is a stepping process as well. But early on, I mean, for one thing, it was like I'm taking a chance, but I also got lucky, and the first video I saw was Max Kaiser. Max Kaiser can convince, I believe, anybody about Bitcoin. And my other roommate, I actually had two roommates. That's how broke I was. I had two roommates. My other roommate actually put me on Max Kaiser because he watched them anyway. Like he watched RT report for whatever. He's more into stocks. So he said, this is guy, Max Kaiser, that mentioned Bitcoin before, but he was like, I said the same thing. He was like, it's too techy for me. I don't understand. So I watched him, and from the jump, I was like, if he's this excited about it, and he's already a millionaire, and he's yelling, and you know how Max is. Max is like, he's crazy. Get him out of here. We don't need it. The money is going to die. I was like, damn, is that really going to happen? So shout out to Max. He's definitely, I can't believe I didn't put him in my top 5, but he's one of those people that's so close. I forget. But yeah, Max. Oh,
you were cool with him too? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He did my first interview for the book and everything. But first person I ever saw was him. And then the second thing I saw was an article from the Winklevoss twins. And I remember them from the social media. So I was like, if these guys are talking about it, I was like, there's something there. I was like, if I'm wrong, at least I can say they were wrong too. Like that's basically as far as I went. But I did understand the tech. I think that was an advantage. As somebody who was in computer science, I understood the basis of it, the Merkle tree, the cryptography. I'm not an expert in those particular places, but I got the mechanism, and I was like, holy shit, somebody figured it out. Because if people don't realize it, that's an actual computer science problem, Byzantine generals problem. How do you create a trustless system? And the triple entry accounting of Bitcoin solved that. And they like literally have to take it out of textbooks now. Like that was amazing to me. Like I lived during a time where somebody figured something out. It was like boom, like it's like seeing the paperwork for electricity or gravity or the internet. So yeah, and I jumped right in, and I've always had the same conviction. The only thing that usually sways people is the same thing that swayed me early on was media. When Silk Road happened and Mt. Gox, I was like, all right, man.
You got to not watch television when you own Bitcoin in the beginning. You got to get through your first cycle. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I got over it real quick, though, because I was like, but it's still chugging along. If it was going to die, it would have died. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Right after Mt. Gox, if it was over, that was the perfect time to say, hey, this is a scam, whatever. But
you lived through the Mt. Gox. I wasn't in it at that. I didn't own it at that point. I knew about it, but I didn't own it during the Mt. Gox thing. That would have freaked me out. No
exactly, especially so early on. Push through.
Particularly if you went all in.
Exactly. I still push through that, and still push to this day. I mean, it doesn't stop.
Bro, I got a guy today. This morning, he hits me up. This guy runs. I don't want to name his name, but he runs a tech company. He's a friend of mine, a Valley guy. He's like, "Are you still long Bitcoin?" I didn't write him back. 10 minutes later, he's like, "I mean, with the threat of the government intervention." And then he sends me an article from early August about the crypto community slams disastrous new amendment to Biden's, and I'm like, the infrastructure bill. I'm like, bro, what, like this is what I'm saying. Like the media, to your point, right? That's what reminded me of this. You get these texts all the time from people, right? And it's like, I had to go back and forth with them on text. I'm like, no, they're not banning it, and they really can't ban it anyway. It's just it's just a law. Like you can't take your keys. Like I was going through the whole thing, and I go, would it hurt the price if they quote unquote legally banned it? Like, of course, there's no question there would be an exodus. That'd be a buying opportunity. I mean, but people don't see that in the early innings of them getting into this asset, you know. But
yeah, but they got to get over that because if they're still listening to the media after this recent fiasco we've had with everything, which man, we've just had so much stuff. I'm like, all right, if you're still listening to them, you are a grown baby at this point. You got to grow up, man. We got to be adults about this and understand it. If you have seen the media long enough, you know that they're not completely honest. Let's just start there. They're not completely honest. Then just look for the truth in whatever you find, and then you'll find a lot of it's not. So
they don't realize my background was in advertising. What they don't realize is that everything for the media is about advertising. It's about sucking you in and sucking in your time. It's all about time. They're just trying to get you to watch that rather than being on your Facebook app at the same time, right? Just suck them into CNBC, suck them into CNN, the Fox News, whatever political side you're on. they're just trying to get your attention. If they got your attention, they could sell the advertising. That's all it is. You know, they don't give a crap what the narrative is. If it was Bitcoin's going to the moon, they talk about that all day if that kept you there, right? But fear sells more than optimism.
Gotta bring those eyes in so you get those dollars.
Speaking of 2013, you said that was your first Bitcoin purchase. You got me on 3 years, by the way, right? 2013, you figured it out. You paid $400 for 2 coins. You're probably regretting that you didn't buy more.
That's all I had. That was in my savings account, $400, like $437 or something. And I was like, man, if somebody wrote a good Reddit thing about Bitcoin being a savings account, even back then, they were like, at the very least, if you just hold on to them, if it does do whatever, that's better than a savings account. I was like, you're right, because my savings account isn't doing shit. It's 0.75%. What is this? And everything else,
you're basically losing money anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Money market accounts, even stocks, everything was like 4%, 7%. So that little bit didn't matter.
But the funny thing is, I'm reading through the book, and then it says in 2017 you wrote that you got hacked, right? Yep. This is you're paying tuition now, right? So the question number one is, did you lose all your Bitcoin at that time? And the other thing is, I think it was a SIM swap. Based on what I was reading, it sounds like a SIM swap. I know some other pretty big Bitcoiners, like Jason Williams, who you know, right? He got SIM swap. Parabolic guy, he got SIM swap. Luke Kerner, a friend of mine, he's a talking head on TV. He's been in Bitcoin for a while. He got SIM swapped. I mean, I think the more notable you are, people know they're going to try their damnedest to figure out what your phone number is, your credentials, your mom's maiden name, all these kind of things. You got to really protect yourself in this space. I'm just reading this here. It says, my email, my phone, and other sensitive information were stolen due to social engineering of family members, and certain precautions were not taken. Mm-hmm. So for the audience that doesn't know you, who hasn't read your book yet, and by the way, you got to read this book. Dope as hell. Such a good book. Check it out. And they'll put it up too, right? Tell us about that experience. Tell us what people can learn from you having to go through and pay your tuition.
Oh, yeah. So, yes, it was a SIM swap, to be more specific. Got SIM swapped. I'm sitting there with a friend. We're just sitting there talking about the game or something. I look at my phone. It says, it beeps really loud, and it says such and such. Your phone is something. Pay us 2 Bitcoin. And I just looked at it, and I kind of laughed because I was like, yeah, this is what's going on. Is this fake? Whatever. But the phone wouldn't do anything. So I was like, oh man. I scrambled for everything, picked up, ran out, ran home, ran to the car, drove home. I was like, oh man, this is crazy. I can't believe this shit happened. Got home, checked everything to make sure, the other stuff was locked down, started changing passwords, everything. I didn't know what was happening because at the time, I figured I was in Bitcoin, but I figured I was protected. And I was like, But what was great was everything, I got no Bitcoin taken. That was the best part about it. From my personal.
They just got in, but then you got quit. You got in,
okay. Everything was locked down. So that's one thing I do tell people is, yes, it happened, but I didn't lose any Bitcoin. So
were you hot or cold at the time when they SIM swapped you? Were you hot or cold?
Oh yeah, definitely cold storage.
So they couldn't have got it anyway.
I got you. Okay. And the only Bitcoin that was affected was business Bitcoin. We had business or Bitcoin on our company feed. And we were using it through, as I say in the book, Shittrex, rhymes with Shittrex. We had it on their exchange. And on their exchange, their policy for withdrawal is supposed to, they send to your email and you verify it. They didn't even have that policy at the time. You could just withdraw it based on whatever problem. So when we actually expressed that to them, they changed their policy the next day. So you could thank us for Bill changing that policy for Bittrex. They literally changed it the very next day. Because I think legally they saw they had some trouble, which at that time it was around 25,000 worth of Bitcoin. At this point, well over, I think 700K or something like that. So yeah, it was an experience. It happened. But we bounced back pretty fast from that and just kept moving forward. So, I mean, even though it happened, my experience wasn't as bad as others because we were protected. Those layers of protection do help. And again, teach security all the time because who cares how much money you make in this market or how much Bitcoin you attain if you can get your shit to, right? So
yeah, if they're gonna take it from you, it's all wasted energy.
Yeah,
right. You just get cold storage, man. Get those ledgers or treasures or whatever, yeah.
And even if they got in my phone, I mean, I usually keep less than $1,000 worth of crypto in there at any time, and even less than that. Really, it's just if I'm out and there's like an event, you can pay with it. I usually we'll talk about spend it just as a martyr, try and give it away.
Well, one of the things you talk about in the book is mid-2015, you joined the Digital Currency Council. You took a course on Bitcoin. It was called the Bitcoin course on Udemy. You took the Princeton Bitcoin and cryptocurrency course on Piazza. You also followed Chris Dunn, trading videos, understanding price movement, TA, it sounds like. You started following people on what we call Bitcoin Twitter. Like, I got to tell you, that was 2015. Wasn't doing any of that, right? I came into Bitcoin learning about it probably like 2012 or so. I was very skeptical, as most people are. It was a very small asset class in terms of the total market cap and value. I never ran across Max Kaiser, and this is crazy, until this year in January. That's unbelievable, because I didn't go down the rabbit hole that way. I went in a different path to learn and understand and find Bitcoin. Everybody's finding their own way. And for whatever reason you did. How did you know to do all this stuff? Like, you must have been just diligently like searching about Bitcoin everywhere, and you found all the right things early on. It was only 2 years later, but like, yeah, explain how you did that. Today it's easier, right? You got YouTube videos and stuff, but yeah.
I actually think the information is easier, but I think it's harder to find great information. Back then,
signal versus noise. Yeah.
Exactly. Because back then it was really like the smartest people, some of the smartest people in the world were putting this information out. And the guy who taught the Princeton course, he went on, Dr. Edward J. Felton, he went on to work for Obama administration like the very next year. So I just, like I said, the courses that seemed legit to me where I was learning and they were taking off, all of these people became, I mean, Chris Dunn is like super multimillionaire at this point, retired, basically legendary trader. So finding these people, I'm an educator. So I know how to find the information. If there's nothing else I know how to do is research and look it up, because I have to know more than people I'm teaching. And just with that thought process, it just takes me down a rabbit hole like most people. It ends up being way more information than really was needed, but it helped because it helped show all the sides of Bitcoin, and it kept that conviction going even through a bear market.
100%. It sounds like that led you to KRBE Digital Asset Group, right? Where then you started to be a consultant and provide education on Bitcoin. How did you do this with basically very little experience at that time? I guess you went down that rabbit hole so much, you became an expert in yourself relative to everybody else in the world, right? Who hired you? Like, where were you being a consultant? Like, hey man, this is my first year doing this. Like, how'd you get clients? That's crazy. And like, how much did you charge? Like, how did that all work? I would love to hear that story.
Oh yeah. So the way it started was a mixture of things. First, I had a side web development company that I had started. I was just doing websites, basically local small groups or whatnot, or small companies. So I would ask them, I would say, hey, would you like to accept Bitcoin on your website? And it was like, they would always say, what is that? And they would give me a chance to explain it. And when I would explain it, they say, hey, could you, tell me and some other people more? Did that a few times. After about 10 clients and doing it for free, word got out, and other people would just email me and say, hey, I heard about this Bitcoin thing. Can you just talk to us about that? We already have a website, but but could you just tell us about that? So started doing it on my own, driving up and down 85. I talked to churches. It was financial groups. It was small family groups, whoever, driving all the way DC, Atlanta, Charlotte, everywhere. So I didn't actually get a course in it or learn. I learned on the job. And I think the experience of teaching actually helped me learn more because it kept me sharp. People were asking me questions I didn't know, and I would have to say, hey, I don't know. And I have to go research until it got to a point where I was doing it so much. I was that's how I got the name Bitcoin Zay. I think I was the only person in Charlotte talking about Bitcoin for about 2 or 3 years there. So people would see me at like Urban League or like Chamber of Commerce, and I'd be the one dude with a Bitcoin sweatshirt, the same dusty Bitcoin sweatshirt. And they're like, that's the Bitcoin dude. Like, that's Bitcoin Zay. So after doing it for a while, that's how KRB started, because I had an old friend from college. He liked Bitcoin and he wanted to learn about it, but he was in the service. So he didn't really want to mess with it until he got out, which was 2016. Linked up with him. We both realized there was a space for education that was needed, because they didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. I mean, we were watching videos, just crying, laughing, like, what?
What are they talking about?
What is that? Like, what are you talking about? So once we saw that, it was pretty easy to start education-wise. And we started out just getting rid of scams. Like, telling people not to buy BitConnect was 30 minutes of the consultation, just convincing them that their money was not real. I just remember all those times of BitConnect, USI Tech, CoinSeed, how many of them there were back in the day. It just started out with that. So then from there, the education started, and then more people learned. We started the channel. I had 3 Bitcoin starter guides we put out, and then now all the way now to a masterclass. So KRB was still keeping it moving all these years, just keeping educating.
So your evolution is amazing, right? You get introduced because you're not making any money. Like you said, I'm making enough money to consider myself broke, right? Take the last $400 you got, you get 2 Bitcoin, which someday that would be like a few $1 million right off the bat, right? But that's 2013, right? Then you move forward, and in 2015, you start doing a lot of research, right? You're consuming this, that. Then by 2016, you got the consultant group company. Then by 2017, you start the Gentleman of Crypto, right? So now you're like, I'm gonna put some content out there. What was the impetus of why you wanted to do that? I guess reach a wider audience, try to help more people was my guess. Also help your brand a little bit too, I'm guessing. Tell us about that experience. Who were the guests on your show early on? Like, why am I going on this show? How large did the audience get back then versus today? And you know, did you make any money running the show in the early days? Like, what were you thinking when you did all that? I love the story, by the way. Like, the evolution is amazing. And by the way, just one more point before you jump in. People need to know you're not going to get it right away. Like, think about that. That's 2013, 14, 15, 16. I mean, come on, man. That's a long time. You spent a lot of time and energy on this to get to where you're at, right? It takes time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I would say for most people who get into this space, they think they can learn it overnight or even in 3 months, 6 months. Like, no, you actually need to see a market cycle. You need to see the psychology of media. So, yeah, everything was just building towards that. And with the Gentleman of Crypto, everything up to that point I was still sort of a silent person. But my business partner, King, he convinced me. He was in PR in the Navy. He convinced me to move to LA just to do the YouTube show. He was like, look, man, I know you want to move to LA anyway. But he was like, when you get here, instead of us just doing consulting, we should do a YouTube show or some sort of podcast. Because he was like, you've seen the YouTubes, they suck. It's a bunch of monotone, it's a bunch of smart dudes, but nobody wants to hear them speaking.
Boring.
Nobody wants to hear about UTXOs and doing that. Yeah, purple tree when you transfer from that. It was just so robotic and there was nothing entertaining about it. And I think we put it together early on the shows. I think our first episode, I think we had maybe like 17 live viewers or something like that. Sure. Even lower than that.
Small, yeah.
But one thing we've always said was throughout the years, because we've been asked this a few times, we're like, why don't you all ever do like an ICO? Or why don't you all ever, promote coins? And I was like, because we want to be in this long term. And one of the biggest things we saw early on was if you just promote any coin and pump it up or whatnot and get prices up, people will join. You'll get more followers, but we want organic growth. So one thing we've seen them come and go, man. During the bear market, it was like watching 300. Everybody was falling by the wayside, just getting chopped down. And we ended up, pushing through that even to this point. And I think early on, the thing that kept us going was we knew if we did it daily, the consistency would work. And we're, as of this point, the longest running daily show in crypto history. Nobody's been doing a daily show as long as we have, on the way to 5 years. So we're at episode 796. So it's crazy how far Gentleman Crypto come. And some of the people we've interviewed, like I said, Cliff High, Reggie Middleton. Today we actually just interviewed a divorce lawyer talking about crypto and child support and divorcing your digital assets. So we're moving to a space now where we're, in our opinion, putting out the best information, the most creative information in the space. Because most people just circle jerk and agree with
you. Bro, I got to tell you, I was on Clubhouse and like all these people they're all saying the same thing. It's like an echo chamber. And I came from a different perspective. Like, we have money, we have trust accounts. I was thinking about next generation and how to pass it to the kids. So I get on the stage and I was like, I don't hear you guys ever talking. Maybe you said this already, but like, have you talked about like generation interchanging of wealth, moving from one hand to another and how to do that? And they haven't. And I was like, that's something that I'm very focused on with my money and assets, and Bitcoin's a big part of that. So like, you guys should be talking about this. Another thing I used to say to people is, if you could buy GBTC and a Roth IRA, I think you should, right? And they weren't talking about that. And I was like, Roth IRA, you could take a 401k, convert it, pay the tax today, which makes sense in Bitcoin because it's growing at 200% a year. Convert that 401k, pay the tax. Don't use the money in there. Come up with it some other way, right? Out of your personal savings if you have it. Pay that damn tax. Put all that money into a Roth IRA. You'll never pay tax for the rest of your life, and it will compound and grow. And if you can get the Bitcoin itself with a self-directed, these are like you're saying, it's always like which wallet to use, or I'm like, bro, that's not helping anybody who's got money, right? Like, people, there's different conversations for different audiences. What I'm saying, you got to talk to everybody.
Absolutely, yeah. And we definitely, I think, do a great job of that. We also, one of the biggest things we started was something called Fuck Bitcoin Fridays, where we bring people on to debate with us. If they think Bitcoin sucks, come on and tell us why.
Oh my God, you just tear these guys up.
Oh yeah, I mean, we had a Ripple guy come on there. We had Hex. The Hexicans always jump on. We got let's see who else. I mean, we got some good arguments on there. We're working on it now for somebody to get the clips. But it's one of the best known, best kept secrets because people don't know about it yet. But once we start getting some of the bigger Bitcoiners on there to argue on fuck Bitcoin Fridays, we like to do it in person.
You got to get Peter Schiff on there with somebody.
Peter Schiff, that's what I'm saying. I wanted to bring Spencer on there just to spite him, but
yeah, the two of them. You should bring the both of them.
Bring them both on there, yeah. I mean, because people can type all day. You know how Bitcoin Twitter is, but who gives a shit? Come talk to us live. We talk to.
That's why I like Clubhouse. I like the dialogue, the depth of the conversation. Like, you know what I mean? It's just a little bit deeper. I want to go to your book for a second. There's something in the book that you wrote. Bitcoin has a similar effect on most people, and that is it changes your way of thinking. This is so true, right? Before Bitcoin, no matter how much money you raise to support a liberation plan, civil rights movement, or march, ultimately, you have to use the banking system. That barrier is now gone, and combined with the ability to communicate globally, cryptocurrency can help the Black community like nothing we've ever experienced before. Please explain to us in more detail for everyone to understand exactly how Bitcoin helps the Black community. Please tell us that, because you talk about this quite a bit in here. I want to hear from your own words right now.
Absolutely. So, in my opinion, this is the biggest transfer of wealth in financial history. And if that's going to happen in the Black community, if we're going to be a part of that, we need to start now. We need to have a sense of urgency. We need to earn. We need to buy and save as much Bitcoin as possible, simply because the current financial system hasn't worked for any of us, but it definitely hasn't worked for us. And if it has individually, kudos to you. But we're talking about over the long term, because of inflation, which affects us all. I believe Bitcoin is a better option. And the way that it helps the Black community is a number of different ways. One, as a savings account, much better than anything we've had before. For two, the ability to donate Bitcoin to some of these quote unquote causes that we have. Bitcoin is a better way. We can actually have transparency in some of the institutions that are big in our community, such as the church. The church, 80% of our community attends religious service per week. So if the church is going to be a big part of it, they should accept Bitcoin. More transparency, less bishops driving Bentleys and people still living in the hood. That's a part of our community, unfortunately. We have a lot of visibility, culture-wise, sports, entertainment. Use what we have to get what we want. As soon as Russell Okung starts talking about accepting Bitcoin, as soon as a rapper starts saying, I accept Bitcoin, what do you think happens with Bitcoin? Skyrockets. That's what we're seeing now. You know, the reason it helps us is because we have the ability to help ourselves. We have the ability to be self-sovereign, and for the first time ever, we have a separation of money and state, but we also have the ability to fund ourselves. Like every single movement ever has had to use the banking system. So it always was going to go back to some sort of stop of blockage in the way. So we can just skirt around that and just keep it moving. That's what I think. I
want to read something else you wrote in the book. It was on page 50. I have it in my notes here. Joining the Bitcoin community is a simple process. However, staying in the community requires a change in the way you think. Just going back to what you were saying. You wrote, investment in traditional markets has been traditionally low amongst the Black community, and many people miss an opportunity to invest in startups like Google, Facebook, Apple, etc. This was due to a lack of education, a lack of finance, or both. Never again, these two subjects should be at the forefront of the mindset going forward to the future. We have to put a premium on learning about finance and technology to ensure the economic survival of America. And specifically, you're talking about the Black community, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you talk about different communities in America, as far as economic survival, you have to be competitive. You have to have skills. You have to be able to be at the forefront of whatever's coming. Now, whether that happens or not is up to you and you individually. So I'm not saying what you do affects the entire community, but if you individually want to change or want to have something in the future, Bitcoin, to me, will be that vehicle. So it's absolutely necessary. And I think, broadly speaking, fintech, it has to be at the forefront. I mean, if you're not in tech at this point, but you're on social media every day, you're hustling backwards. And I think in the Black community, that's something that we are definitely getting better at, but still not enough. And I think when you combine the best parts of finance and the hardest parts of tech, put it together, Bitcoin, we can kill two birds with one stone, which is how I put it in the book. We can just go ahead and tackle all that all at once. So let's get started. I
got a real good friend, this guy, Renee McLean. He's in the music industry, and he knows everybody. Like, the guy's a super connector in that industry. He's one of the guys behind the scenes you don't really see. He used to be the manager for LMFAO. He has an ad agency. He's got a music fund, $300 million, buying up catalogs. I mean, he's so connected. This guy's legit, right? And at the end of the day, like, he introduced me to people like Queen Latifah and Master P and others, and we wanted to raise a fund like 10 plus years ago. It was like 15 years ago, I think. And we would go to these guys, some of these rappers and stuff, and be like, yo, so we want you to come into the fund. We want to invest in companies. These are all pre-IPO at the time. Remember, this is like 2010, 2009. Facebook, Zynga, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. Right? We gave them a list of companies. I was like, at the end of the day, they have these, they being the founders, the Jack Dorseys, the Tom Andersons of MySpace, the Mark Zuckerbergs, right? They have made their billions of dollars on your name, likeness, and talent. Think about that. You should invest in buying the stock off their employees who are trying to get some liquidity before it goes public, because you could benefit on the way up, because these companies are taking 12 years to go public. But to your point, they weren't making the investments. I remember Master P literally said to me, he's like, all right, I'll do 50,000. I was like, awesome. He's like, all right, well, the guy will give you my wire instructions. You can send me 50,000. I swear to God. I was like, wait, what are you talking about? Wait, you send me the money. And he's like, oh no, I don't pay. You pay me. I was like, no, it's a fund. But you look at Nas did it. Coinbase made $100 million, right? You got to understand that wealth comes from equity and leverage. And Bitcoin gives you that capability now. Like, it's a flat, even playing field. Everybody has the capability now to invest in an Facebook. It's right here in front of you. This thing is growing rapidly, right? Yeah, it's like the next Facebook.
I'm glad you used that word leverage, because in any business deal, that's all you have is leverage. You either have it or you don't. You don't have leverage, don't even show up. So I think in the Black community, basically, to me, we look weak on TV crying, could you please stop? Could you please not do this? Could you please? No, you need to show up with leverage, saying, hey, we'll leave completely. We'll leave the system completely. And I think it's actually starting. I just saw a poll that Black Americans actually buy crypto more than percentage-wise than any other race in America.
That's awesome.
And that is a huge flip, simply because I just think it was visibility and education. That's it. I never thought that people would learn about it and turn it down. It's just people need to learn about it. Then once they did, it's like, all right, cool. We can do that. We can change how things are done. But you got to have leverage, man. And that's the only way to get it. You got to get it.
You get it. And your partner we mentioned before, you're going to talk about him now, Lamar, you guys started something I think is phenomenal. On Clubhouse, it's a new drop-in audio app. If people haven't heard about it, it's amazing. You get in, you get to talk to amazing different people like yourself. You talk to Max Kaiser. We've had him come in. Michael Saylor's come in the room. I mean, you could talk to these influencer people like the Jimmy Song. I mean, and I became friends with a lot of these people. And anyway, you guys co-founded the largest Bitcoin group on Clubhouse, other than the word Bitcoin. Obviously, everybody says, oh, they type it in the first time. But take that aside for a second. Black Bitcoin Billionaires, I think you guys have like, 150,000 roughly people that have, that's amazing. 150,000 people on a brand new app, right? It's only like a year old. So you co-founded this with Lamar. The reason I'm telling everybody about this is like, those people that you're talking about that are now coming up and they're buying Bitcoin, in part, it's due to what you guys have been doing on Facebook, on here, in the book that you wrote, all the content that you've been producing, the consulting thing. Like, we need more people to do this, right? I think it's phenomenal. And so people are like, oh no, Zay's already doing it. No, man, we need like 100 more people doing this shit, right? Because it's a movement, right? Like, you have to get people involved. Can you tell us how you guys arrived at the idea to do that? Because it was genius in hindsight, but it's always the foresight, right? Give me the impetus of, like, you know, the origin story of that.
Oh yeah. Well, I think we've always wanted to do something like this. That's why me and Lamar had that show before. Yeah. Facebook's just not the right vehicle. Clubhouse was perfect, and I think it was also lightning in a bottle, because it was, you know, during COVID times, Clubhouse took off. So we said to each other, Lamar called me and said, hey, this new app Clubhouse, I don't know if you heard of it. It's kind of taking off. And I was like, nope, never heard of it. Don't even know what it is. And he was like, well, we can create a group, and then we can just basically teach Bitcoin on there. It's like, all right, let's do it. That was it. It was less than 2 minutes. Because me and Lamar go back so far. Like, we've been to conferences together and taught and done courses. So I was like, yeah, anything he brings up, I'm with it, right? The biggest thing was, when we first started, I think it was only the Bitcoin group, us, and like one other one. Now it's
because like, nobody could create them. You guys got in early. You created it.
And you had to be invited. So I was lucky enough to get invited. We created it from scratch. And then most of the people that we brought on was based off of the old crowd we already had. You got to remember, Lamar, he had 30, 40,000 people, I think, at some point on Facebook.
Kept promoting it on Facebook. Yeah.
Kept pushing on Facebook. And then, of course, I had my channel. I have, on Twitter now, 50-something thousand followers, just pushing it organically, just telling people, hey, just join, tell your friend, tell your mom, whatever. Yeah. And it was great, because finally people could join in and learn about Bitcoin, like, quickly.
And interact with you guys too.
Yeah, they can ask us questions, because before it's like email back and forth, or I got to take this course or whatever, or consulting. It could take a little while. So yeah, we did that, and it blew up so fast. And I think one of the things that helped it was our partnership with Cash App. In February of this year, we partnered with Cash App for Black History Month to do something called the Satoshi Millionaire Campaign. And this campaign was for every family to own 1 million Satoshis, which at the time was about $250. 1 million Satoshis at $250 is not bad. That's doable, right? I think anybody could do that. Me and Lamar came up with that, and then he actually created the Who Wants to Be a Satoshi Millionaire game, which I think was
cool.
genius. I mean, genius on Clubhouse.
People tried copying it too, man. He came in the room, private room, and he's like, "Yo, you see that shit? Get in there and tell him." I was like, "Absolutely, I'm with you, man."
Oh yeah, people try to copy almost everything we do. So I think that was great as well. And then the moderators, we've had some amazing moderators, like you said.
Yeah,
we can't do it ourselves, so now
Legal's always up there. Yep.
Oh yeah. We got about 12 moderators now, all knowledgeable, all different aspects. Some have doctorates, some are proficient in the investment side.
Naja Roberts and stuff.
Yep, Naja Roberts with crypto blockchain, crazy. So because we have that, we worked our way all the way to the point where we basically had our first like mini meetup in Miami for the Bitcoin conference. We had over 100 people come from all around the country. And because we have so many thousands of people in the group on Clubhouse, we're trying to keep that going as far as in-person meetings. So yeah, it's just been an amazing experience. And I just think long-term, building groups like that is what spreads it worldwide, because we have people calling from the UK, Nigeria, everywhere. And I think the work that we've done has helped with those percentages. I think people are starting to get convinced because we know what we're talking about. Before, most people would say, yeah, I heard of it, but it was from my dumbass cousin who's never done it. So it's from my drunk uncle.
You never listen to the people you know either.
Exactly. It's from my drunk uncle who's never made $1 in his life. And he's telling me to buy some coin. Like,
I'm not listening to that guy.
Yeah, exactly. And I think now that I was like, man, it's other people that that look like me in space that have gone through some of the same stuff economically, and they understand what's going on. They're trustworthy. I'm with it. So I think that's all that needed to happen.
That's dope. All right. So one thing I found in your book, I think it was like page 38, 39. I'm my notes here. The book mentions that Lamar created a shit coin called CJs. I was like, wait, I talked to him about this already, so I already know what's up. But I want you to tell everybody what's up with that. And I know it's been like 2 years since you wrote the book, and you had a lot of time to research and continue to learn about the space. Do you believe there's an alternative coin, or do you believe in any alternative coins or crypto? Because you talk about cryptocurrency all the time throughout the book. I know we talked about this once before. Tell the difference between Bitcoin versus crypto, and like what was the CJ's coin? Like, what explain all that to me.
Oh yeah. So yes, Bitcoin and crypto are two totally different things. Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer cash, long-term global monetary system. Different. Cryptos, to me, are companies with a digital coin attached.
Centralization.
Centralization. They're a company. They have a foundation. They have a central leader, and they issue a coin that you speculate on. That's it. The thing with cryptocurrencies is the word was being to me, it's still overused. Whenever I talk to people, I say, yeah, I'm in Bitcoin. And then they start, oh yeah, I'm in the cryptos. I'm like, that's different. And the only reason in the first book I used it that much was because I knew my crowd. Just because people don't understand, we take it for granted now that you could just get a wallet. But there was a time where people had no clue what we were talking about. We said send and receive. We were just like send and receive. They were like, so what do you send it to? We were like copy and paste, and people were like, how do you copy and paste? Do I think anything will replace Bitcoin or is alternative? No, not even close. But I think other coins, the use cases that other people find, absolutely. That's on them. But the speculative USD price of it, again, all part of the markets, and they all need Bitcoin to succeed. That's the big difference. Bitcoin doesn't need all the other stuff can go away. Bitcoin will keep chugging along. They all need Bitcoin to succeed. If it goes away, not much hope else. There's no hope for anything else. So, that was just testnet, and it worked out. People got more knowledgeable and moved on from there.
So one thing I loved about your book was your analogy between Bitcoin and driving a car. Why don't you tell everybody about that? I think that was a pretty cool analogy. Do you want me to quote it, or do you could just talk about it?
Oh yeah, well I'll paraphrase. So basically, the good thing about driving a car is you don't need to know how to change the transmission in order to know how to operate it. Right? If you know the basics, you know how to change the tires, you know how to push the gas, the brake, you know how to move the steering wheel, you're good. Same thing with Bitcoin. If you know how to download a wallet, send it, receive it, how to store it, different things like that, you're pretty much good to get started. Now, if you go deeper down that rabbit hole, that's on you. But again, for most people, it is very easy to start at this point, just to get the basics. And that's really all you'll need at this point in order to take advantage. And I just wanted to put that across. Some people thought you had to be a super expert software developer.
Yeah, they think you got to be technical, right? Yeah.
And it's like, no.
I mean, there's a little bit of technicality because it's like, I think like wallets will get easier. I think Jack's supposed to be working on that at Square, right? So they're probably going to make things a little bit easier. because you gotta remember, it's early days. It was developed by developers, and as you know, as a developer yourself, like you know that they're not, the UI UX is not going to be perfect. They're going to work on the back end, which is what we really care about. You want layer one and everything, like when they programmed and built the thing the right way. It's got to be secure. That's a number one thing.
Yeah.
But people make mistakes. No one really, Bitcoin doesn't get hacked. The people get hacked. That's the problem. Like you said before, right? Like everyone's like, what if Bitcoin gets hacked? I'm like, that's not going to happen. It's a protocol. It's like saying, can SMTP get hacked? I mean, I don't know. I don't think so.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny too, when people make those mistakes, they think it's just individuals. The New York Times said that today. What a bunch of dumbasses. They were like, yeah, the same way that blah, 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 they lost it. If a password is lost, Bitcoin lost 20% of its value because of something like Quadriga CX. And I was like, idiots. Who are these people?
Right.
But again, that's how early. We're early, man. We're early. They really think it's a password to Bitcoin.
I always remember Katie Couric on television. I think it was Katie Couric. It was like the Good Morning America when it was like early days in the 90s. It's a very viral video these days where she's like, what's a .com? Is it .com? .com? What is that? You know, and it was like Al Roker's there. He's like, I don't know. It was like, they have to live with that today, right? Everybody who's doing this Bitcoin stuff, 20 years, will be making fun of you in viral videos.
Oh, yeah. Right? Our kids are going to be laughing at you, man. It's going to be hilarious.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So one thing, I love the book, by the way. I really do. I love the book. The one thing that I kind of disagree wholeheartedly on in the book was you talk about encouraging people to spend their Bitcoin. Now, Andreas Antonopoulos was on stage with us a few months ago, and he does the same thing. He actually pays employees. He takes the Bitcoin to sell it to invest in his business. And I'm like, why don't you just raise money? You're a pretty notable guy. Like, you don't need to sell your own Bitcoin. But he's more of like radical in a way. He's a true maximalist, I guess, when it comes to this kind of stuff. He wants to really have it move as a medium of exchange. I think we're ways away from a medium of exchange because of the volatility of it. I mean, it's already happening in certain places like El Salvador. Be interesting to see how it plays out in the next few months. But I kind of discourage people from doing this because of the price movement. It's like, if you want to just take money and convert it to Bitcoin to pay with Bitcoin, but not money that you're saving. Okay, I agree with you on that front. But I mean, I just don't, I've always said, you have buckets of money in life, right? I have long-term money I'll die with if you're wealthy. There's money that I'm going to have for my retirement if you're not, right? You want to save that money to let it grow. Don't touch that, right? Then there's other money where you can gamble with it. You know, you go to the casino, you have entertainment, go to the movies. Explain to me why in the book you were kind of talking about encouraging people, I think, to use it as a medium of exchange.
Oh, yeah. So the first thing was when I was using it as a medium of exchange, it was more of marketing, like basically showing people that it works. This is how you can use it. And when people would accept it, the value of Bitcoin over time growing, they would look and say, man, I've made so much money off of this. I'm going to accept Bitcoin. So it's sort of, do you put the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart? And what I was saying was build the infrastructure now so that when spending becomes more viable, when it's less volatility, you already have a company treasury. You already have a point of sale. You already have the option to accept Bitcoin, because I even say to this day, you can say you accept Bitcoin. Nope. Nobody may use it for 3 years.
Right.
Just being honest. Even when I, consult with businesses, I'm saying, yeah, you could have open node, you could have the whole setup, and nobody ever spends it, and I wouldn't blame them because again, I don't spend it now frivolously. I do for certain stuff to prove a point, basically, that it works, but I don't encourage anybody to use it for their day-to-day in a relatively stable currency, which is the dollar. In other countries, however, that is a little different. Where the volatility of Bitcoin is nothing compared to the volatility of fiat. So
that's bread goes up 50% by the end of the day.
Exactly. So it's like, I might as well just use Bitcoin, because at least I know over time that value will increase. So my thing with spending is, yes, that day will come. I think that day will come as a result of all businesses saying, hey, at least we got to have the option available. Once the option is available, then they'll say to themselves, the only way we can get it is if we give discounts. Huge discounts, I think 30, 40, 50%. Even I think the U.S. government, they're going to say, hey, you can pay taxes. We'll give you a 50% discount, because they're going to want Bitcoin so much. Once I think it's at, 500,000, a million a coin, that game theory will play out. And because it's so valuable, some people may opt to use it, but that's sort of what Bitcoin was meant for, was at peer-to-peer level where you're spending it. Hopefully the tax laws become more favorable, because that kind of kills it.
I was going to say, the tax laws kind of prevent this right now.
Spend it, that's dumb. That's why I think Lightning Network is great, because Lightning Network solves that issue, because that was a thing early on. I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, I want people to try and spend it, but if every time it's a taxable event, it's the dumbest shit ever, right?
It's a nightmare too for an audit perspective. And
man, Jesus Christ, I wouldn't even want to imagine spending it every day. But Lightning Network, kind of solves that and kind of shows, the progression that at a certain point, it will be a medium of exchange. I think El Salvador is just the beginning. The fact that they kind of pushed it on their people, not a big fan of. But you got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they got a state-sponsored wallet.
The question is, how many of the people converted it to dollars? Somebody was telling me there was lines of people at ATMs trying to cash in for dollars. Like, they don't understand the value. To your point, you give it to them. If they don't understand it, they're going to sell it. They're like, oh, free $30. Bro, you don't want the dollars. Just sit on that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what people think until, again, they have to see it as well. Most people sell it first. And then the next thing they know, Bitcoin's at 100,000. They're like, if we would have kept it, it would have been $60. Oh, so I should keep it next time.
Yeah.
And that's, people got to learn. Nobody gets.
Mike Moss, I was on podcast day, and Mike Moss was saying, he goes, it wasn't a great first experience. Like, they get the $30, and then later that day it was like $20 because we had the crash there right around that time. He was like, it's not a great experience.
That was some coordinated shit because I already saw that coming. I feel like there was so much selling pressure coming for that day, like even the jump right before September 7th.
Who do you think is doing that? Not individuals, but like the profile of why it happens. Who?
Yeah, well, the whales that do it, I think they use the euphoria of the news of a big event coming, just like anything else, buy the rumor, sell the news. And I also think that if people have enough money and they want to speculate and sort of short at certain intervals, midterm,
it drops because it's so.
They can't really stop Bitcoin, but midterm, if they do want to get a good play, they can usually get it.
They can't sustain the drop by continually shorting. They run out of money.
Exactly, right. Yeah. But they can make it look bad. And that's what they tried to do. Yep. I was on Fox Business saying that exact same thing. They brought me on about El Salvador. The first thing they said was, well, what about the volatility? Every time I go on TV, they ask about volatility. I've been on TV since Bitcoin was 20,000 all the way to 60, now at 45. It's volatile. Yeah.
That's what you said there too. You were like, it was great. Like, I think you were like, I'm glad there's more for me to buy, so you guys can stay where you're at. Keep learning about the volatility.
I was like, yeah, you know what? Don't buy it. How about that?
She didn't know what to say, man. She was like, well, it was nice having you on. She had no rebuttal.
Because at this point, it's like, all right, I know the game. I know every time you bring people on, you want to talk about volatility. But again, you all always show a chart that's like a one-day chart, and they show this huge dip off like it was just a terrible whatever, when in reality it was 4%. Like, what are we talking about here?
The other thing was they're showing a bunch of shitcoin charts while you're talking about Bitcoin. You're not talking about that, right? Did you see that? I was like, why are they showing Litecoin and all this crap? I was like, what is going on?
I wish I could see it. I'm staring at a blank Skype screen whenever I went to you. So when I saw it, I was like, why is XR? What the fuck is XRP?
Yeah, I said the same thing, bro. I was watching it. I was like, what is happening here?
They lump it all together, which again, like I said, the only reason I put cryptocurrency in the first book, because it's not in the second one, like at all. The only reason I put it in the first one is because they lump it all together. That's what people see it as. But then once you start the separation, it becomes pretty clear who's actually going to succeed long term.
All right. In your book, you wrote this. You wrote, over time, the Federal Reserve has tried to maintain a 2% in core inflation rate because we expect to see rising prices over time. However, we all know this process has not been beneficial to Black Americans and has made the middle class nearly non-existent due to the stagnant wages and higher prices. You later say, quote, it's like the old tale of the frog in the pot. Great line, by the way. What you said was, if you turn the heat up too fast, the frog senses danger and he jumps out of the pot. But if you turn up the heat slowly over time, by the time the frog realizes it, he's cooked, right? Basically, Black America, like the frog in the pot, has been getting cooked slowly by inflation. Such a good line, bro. You're right. Take into account historically, racist policies dedicated to keeping Black people economically shut out. And you start to see why Bitcoin is so important for the Black people. This is so important for people. Everybody needs to read this book, I'm telling you. I don't disagree with most of this, but I argue that it's likely the same for any of the poor people, whether they're Black, white, Asian, Latino, right? I don't know. You probably don't disagree with that. Obviously, you're speaking to your audience, but it's the truth. It's like, is there racism? Clearly racism. There's a lot of classism, though. That's what it seems like. It's like the only color that matters is green to the people that are in the power, right? And they're just trying to get as much of that green money as possible. We're looking at orange, but they're looking at green. Seems like there's this concerted effort by the elite, by the people in the power, I think, the rich, I guess, that are in power, to keep their power. So they sort of cause inflation intentionally, which allows the wealthy to retain their assets, which go up in value because there's nowhere else to put your money other than that, because the interest rates are so low, right? So their assets keep going up, they keep getting wealthier, and then the wages aren't going up. There's just like this dichotomy that just continually happens. But obviously the Black community is disproportionately impacted by all of this because they're starting out with no assets, right? Like this is crazy. So I just thought that was a really interesting thing that you talk about inflation, because to me, man, a lot of this has to do with that, right? If you had high interest rates, 8% interest rates on a 30-year, I don't know the Bitcoin would be at the same price as it is today. Maybe it would based off the supply crunch over time. But it seems like there's more money pushing in, particularly that wall of money from Wall Street and stuff saying, we got to get in here because there's nowhere else to put money.
Yeah. And of course, to save yourself against inflation, you have to have an asset that beats it. And of course, they're lying with this 5% bullshit. Inflation is only going to be 5% next year. Come on, are you kidding me? Who are you talking to? It's definitely going to be at least 15 to 20%. At least 15 to 20%. And I think that most people are not ready for it in terms of what will happen with Bitcoin. I think you are going to see a flood of Wall Street money, a flood of everybody's money going into an asset like Bitcoin and others, because once they realize your money is worthless, the only things you do have are assets. Bitcoin being the best performing, like you said, 200% compound annual growth year over year, it's going to be a no-brainer, man. I think Q4 is going to be explosive for that reason, because when Wall Street gets their bonuses, that's when all the regulators go home. That's what, as you can see, every bull market, it pumps when? Early December, mid-December, right before Christmas. We make this big money and we get out of there. But I think this is going to be similar, except this time will be more sustained, because now we have countries buying it, and we have companies like MicroStrategy constantly buying it. So they're scooping up dips. I don't think we're going to have a 3-year bear market or a 2.5-year bear market. There may be 6 to 8 month bear traps, like long-term bear traps, where they're basically clearing out all the trash and people that were euphoric. But then they're going to be like, all right, let's get back to it. That's sort of what hyper Bitcoinization will look like, I think, going into 2024. So not really scared at all. That'll definitely happen.
Your book really opened my eyes to something that, as a white guy growing up in America, I just didn't see: the banking system, the inherent racism within the banking system. I was blown away by some of this stuff. I'm curious to learn about that inherent racism within the banking system that you mentioned in chapter 1. I'd like to read a few more things that you wrote in the book, if you don't mind. You said banks who encourage redlining, denied loans to qualified applicants, even beyond the race. You say we have to stop trying to appeal to the moral authority of these institutions who obviously have no morals when it comes to doing business with our community. Then you cite several settlements. This is the part that blew my mind. It's like we talk about these things, but you actually put some facts in here. You go to page 104, I could read them out to you, but like these banks have been found. Well, they settled. They obviously weren't found guilty, but they settled for ridiculous sums of money, hundreds of millions of dollars for these racist acts of redlining and what have you. So it's not like, oh, well, maybe it's redlining. No. Like they're admitting it, right? Why would you settle? They know this is damage control at this point, right? And it's not like the CEO is mandating it. It's happening at the ground level with the racism, I think is what's happening. When I see these incidents happening in 2021, bro, I'm like blown the fuck away. I'm like, what is even going on in this world, right? Why do you think this is still happening, number one? And are there some white dudes in a room with a smoky room with cigars and a scotch, right? Like, or is it like, it's just happening at the ground level? Like, why is this still happening? And it blows my mind. And when I read that in a book, I was just blown away.
Well, it starts with the history of it. So, all right, let's start with FHA loans, which...
Can I just say one thing before? This is insane, right? This is legit, right? 2017, and I got to call him out on it. You got it in the book. I want people to know. JP Morgan settles racist loan claims, $55 million payment. African American taking out $191,000 loan, on average paid $1,126 more over the first 5 years than the white borrowers. Bank of America pays $335 million. Bank of America pays another $2 million. Merrill Lynch pays $160 million. Wells Fargo, $175 million. I mean, the list goes on. This is insane shit, dude. I mean, this is not theoretical. It's happening.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is, hey, when money's printed and then it's given to banks, they just do what they want and then they pay off the fine and nobody goes to jail. So why not? Why not have practices that discriminate against people? Because it actually lowers their risk in their mind based on rules that they created. So here's the rules they created. All right, 98% of FHA loans going to white people back in the 40s. They bought all the good property. They have the good areas. Perfect. Black people, even if you want to live in these areas, if you do have the money, you can't get a loan to get there. And if you move in, the property value goes down. In fact, if you move into that area, the white people there try to get you out because their property value goes down. So what's the incentive? To keep black people out. You push black people to the areas where it's cheaper. Where are the cheaper areas? Near highways, near oil refineries, and all the steel mill and gas places. People used to work there. We had a strong middle class in the 50s and 60s in the black community. Those jobs go, what happens? Now it's the inner city. Now it's the urban community. Then, of course, because of the housing appreciation of value over time, Suburbs go up in value. Inner city goes down, just the way it goes. And most people's wealth is attained through real estate. So why do you think things are the way they are? No, this is coordinated. So was it a group of guys smoking cigars in a room? Yeah, but it was just like 7 years ago, and it still persists to today. So just think about, just think about what I just said. 70. If you have a parent that's 70, this is in your lifetime. This isn't some ancient. I'm not talking about 1800, 70. No, I'm talking about 1940s, 70, 80 years ago. So if you have a parent that's that old, yes, there was a group of people that sat around and said, yes, we're going to give 98% of this money to white Americans. Now, the definition of white can be argued back then because it was a little bit more split, Italian, Russian. We had, of course, everybody had their nationalities, but it wasn't black people. That was that's what it was. So dealing with that, getting over that from banks, we don't owe them shit. That's the main point with black people is stop trying to appeal to them being nice to us. Like they always have some bullshit commercial. We donated to the United Negro College Fund to $10 million for blah, 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 blah. They make that in 10 seconds. That means nothing to them. And I call it the Nino Brown effect. Nino Brown sold the crack in his neighborhood and then gave out turkeys on Thanksgiving, and that was enough. It's all good. Yeah. You don't get credit for putting out the fire that you started.
John Gotti was the same way.
John Gotti's the same way. That's what I'm saying, man. It's just like the mindset of these people is sick to the point where we just accept it, and it's forced consensus. As we know with Bitcoin, it's on you. It's just consensus of the people that want to join. But this is forced consensus. We have to use banks. But now that we don't, let's see what happens when we don't.
Your solution was, let's just, to your point, exit the banking system, go to Bitcoin, right? That's the solution.
I will. Yeah. I mean,
put the power in your hands.
Slowly take your fiat dollars and put them in Bitcoin and never move it. That's another thing. Don't put it in Bitcoin to sell later. Keep it in Bitcoin because that's another thing. It can't be taxed. Once you put it in Bitcoin, there's no taxes against it. And for two, it's a better savings account anyway. So why not? I mean, I don't really see a bad thing there outside of not having the money to do it, which again, I'm not telling you to spend your last like I did, but if you do have savings, I would say Bitcoin is a much better savings account at this point for anybody going forward.
Future other solutions you had in the book was education, politics, music, sports. Actually, I had Sean Culkin on my show. He told me he was roommates with Russell, and when he was in training camp, who basically orange pilled him on the fact that you should be taking your Bitcoin. I'm sorry, your salary in Bitcoin. Which he was the first one, I think, to do the whole salary. Russell did like 50%, but he was the first one to announce it, I guess. You were early on this, writing about this 2 years ago, actually, and now I see other athletes are obviously doing this. They're taking their salaries and endorsement deals in Bitcoin. I saw Saquon Barkley, I think, and others. By the way, congrats on that because you're really forward thinking on this. The only thing I don't agree with 2 years after you wrote the book was that you thought, quote, it would force business owners to constantly buy, hold, and use Bitcoin in order to pay them. But as we're seeing with striking, they don't even need to do that. Which is actually fine, But the thinking, I wouldn't even say I disagree with it. It just turned out to not be that way because of other technology that's out there, right? So I think that probably would have been the case. They might have just said no. If I don't want to hold Bitcoin, who knows what they would have said, right? But you could have just said, I'm going to denominate my salary in Bitcoin, not in dollars. And they could have owned the Bitcoin, held the Bitcoin, and paid you in Bitcoin. But now it's strike. They don't even need to do that. But my hat's off to you. You were really forward thinking on this when you wrote the book. So I thought it was really interesting. And to your point, I guess, politics, music, sports, this is an influential thing for people, right? So you get influential people to talk about it, and it makes people say, wait a second, it's not my drunk uncle. It's just like Saquon Barkley talking about doing this shit. I got to look into it. So it's really important just for that reason alone, that prominent, influential, famous people start to take their salaries and their endorsement deals in Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And I understand the psychology of people. I was asked this before. And first, shout out to Russell, shout out to Sean. I actually had lunch with Sean out in LA last time I was there. Been talking to Russell about it since 2018. So yeah, shout out to them for taking that step. And one thing I noticed is the psychology of people. I could talk to them blue in the face. I feel like I'm one of the best speakers in the game, in my industry, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. Some 15-year-old doesn't give a shit about me. It's like, who's this random bald-head dude trying to tell me about Bitcoin? But if Migos, which they did, if Snoop Dogg, if whoever else, again, Russell, these athletes, Saquon Barkley says it, then all of a sudden, if you're number one pick, like the number one NBA draft pick and the number one NFL draft pick, both got their bonuses in cryptocurrency or in Bitcoin. So if that starts happening, they'll listen to them. So I would rather appeal to them so that then they can get it to the younger crowd. So it doesn't seem scary or something they shouldn't do. Because at this point, the floodgates have been open. That's one thing I will give NFTs. It kind of brought in people that would have never even mentioned crypto or Bitcoin or anything about it, but it's good marketing to bring them in. I think all roads lead to Bitcoin at some point, but I think that celebrity star status helps definitely. You got to have it just to get going, but a lot of them need to jump off the crypto train and start talking more about Bitcoin. We'll solve that later.
I agree. Like I hear a lot of crypto. Like I think like Paris Hilton. Like it's like come on guys, but they don't. They're new to it, right? They're learning as you go. Like that's what it is, right?
Yep. Just medicine in the candy. You got them in. Trojan horse them, and then then they're gonna realize, oh, should have been Bitcoin the whole time. And there's a few.
I gotta go to something else on here, but I'm gonna talk about that like Trojan horse. I think NFTs are Trojan horse. Now the Bitcoin maximalists, they're like so like me and Jason Williams have been on Twitter talking about chill frogs, and we're talking about rare pepes and all these things, and everyone's attacking us like, oh, you're gonna get people wrecked. I'm like, no, I'm gonna get people in. And then when they're in, they understand how to use a wallet and how to use addresses. And like, there's a whole learning process here. I'm not saying put all your money in a freaking rare pepe but you should mess around with some money that you're willing to lose, like you would go to the casino with, or scratch off, or go to a football game and see the Giants or whatever. Like that experience. Let's say you want to go to a Yankee game or I live in the New York area. You want to go Yankee game or something like that. That's a $500 day at a minimum, right? Like between you and two other people. It's like you guys go put that money into like an NFT, mess around this. Oh, they should just buy Bitcoin and hold it. They're not going to. You know that. We both know. They're going to buy it. They're going to sell it. They're going to lose money on Bitcoin too. If you don't think people are getting wrecked in Bitcoin with this volatility, other assets aren't this kind of volatile. You're buying the S&P 500, SPY. It's not dropping 5-6% a day, right? That doesn't happen, right? Midday. Like you're buying like commodities, you're buying real estate. They don't even have a quote on your real estate that you buy. That's not happening, right? You buy an NFT, you're going to learn the process of crypto technology and how you can move things around. I think that's a great introductory as a Trojan horse. So the fact that you said that, something that Jason and I have been working on, pushing it, and we're getting a lot of heat from people. And I'm like, guys, back up, man. This is introduction to the crypto space.
That's what I'm saying, because I've gotten some on the show and some as well. And I like it. I actually like it because what it shows is that you prove my point. You all are very smart, but you suck at human psychology. If you can't realize, first of all, you haven't talked to enough people if you really think Bitcoin only works. It doesn't. There's no way I could have any influence. If every time somebody asked me about something different and I was like, nope, Bitcoin
yelled
only.
At them.
And again, just yelled at them, no, Bitcoin only. The first thing they would do is go look up the other shit anyway.
Because they go to the next guy.
They would just go to the next guy. So I was like, yeah, tell them about the other stuff. It's just like a professor, right? As a professor, I can say, hey, Keynesian, Austrian economics. I think this is Keynesian, this is Austrian. I can teach it.
Yeah.
But if somebody says, hey, professor, what is your opinion? I say, oh, Keynesian is a crock of shit, and Austrian is the way we should go. And then they were like, okay, but what should I do? Do what you want, but this is the information, and then I have my own opinions. That's the thing about Bitcoin is like, yeah, I think nothing's even close to Bitcoin. It's definitely it's the global standard. This is where we're going. But you mean to tell me I can't talk about other shit?
You know what's weird too? I'm going to say this. I went down the rabbit hole on NFTs recently, right? I never messed around with an NFT. And I've been hearing about it all year. Like I had a buddy, he made millions of dollars trading NFTs. I was like, get out of here. Because everyone was like, oh, it's pure luck. It's like, no, there's actually a strategy to the NFT game. He walked me through it. I learned it. I said, oh, it's really interesting. I don't know if I'm going to do that, right? But I thought it was interesting. Like, okay, it's cool. So then everybody starts attacking me. And I'm like, well, hold on. Let me ask you a question. Like, I don't want to name names, but these are some influential people in the space. And they're like, nah, it's a bunch of bullshit. And I go, let me ask you a question. Do you ever buy and sell an NFT? Well, no, I don't need to touch the shit to know it's shit. I can smell it's shit. This is the kind of stuff they would say to me. It's a shit coin. I'm like, listen, bro, that is ignorant. By definition, that is ignorant. You calling me ignorant? I was like, absolutely, that's ignorant. Ignorant means you're talking about something you have absolutely no experience at all. You theoretically do, like a professor, like you meant. It's theoretical to you. But unless you actually go through the process, I'm not saying you got to invest your last dollar. Put $500 in just to go through the process of understanding it. I don't mean just buy it, right? Go through the process. And when you go through the process, you'll understand the psychology of why people are doing these things, and you'll understand what it's about. It's not an investment to replace Bitcoin. It's an introductory step, though, into crypto and understanding wallets and all this other stuff, And as they have an appreciation and understanding for what you're preaching, which is Bitcoin is sound money, eventually they'll understand that and they won't be scared of it. That's all I'm saying. And everybody comes in their own way, but to ignore that and then just yell at those people, I don't understand the maxis on this.
Yeah, get over yourself. Yeah, because to me, like I said, there's a bunch of nerds that finally got some money and finally got a couple prostitutes and finally they feeling themselves too much. But really, in real life, they wouldn't fucking talk to me like that in my face.
No.
But online, it's funny. I just always laugh. I'm like, a few guys finally got their life's dream off of this shit. So, it's like it's good to just be able to join the group. It's, yeah, Bitcoin only, Bitcoin only. Yeah, it sounds good, but again, I'll keep doing the work and I'll do whatever the fuck I want. Because again, if I go to the casino, spend $10,000 tomorrow, yeah, I could have bought some NFTs if I wanted to. Same shit, whatever. Let me go get some JPEGs and try and resell them. Who cares?
Yes.
Like we get some rare Pepe's, some boring, what is it, confused apes, whatever they call them now.
Boring apes. Yeah, exactly.
So, who cares, man? If you really had conviction about Bitcoin, you really wouldn't care. Like
exactly. It's like, who are they trying to convince, themselves or me?
Exactly. I'm like, because I've been convinced. My track record speaks for itself, but I'm a technologist. I like trying new stuff. You don't think I'm gonna go in the metaverse and try and get some digital real estate? You must be outside of your fucking mind. I know nerds will stay inside and they're gonna use the metaverse. It's fun though. Like, why not? I can get my nephew on there and teach him about crypto. Best way to teach kids, I think, is the metaverse with NFTs.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely,
they get it instantly and then they go from there. And then, because I mean, you can start trying to teach kids about the Federal Reserve with Bitcoin, but they'll probably fall asleep 5 minutes into you. So
yeah, that's right.
There's some fun ways to do it. I did it the summer camp I taught this year. I did a Federal Reserve operation, thing, but activity. It was fun, but again, the most fun they had was NFTs, and when we were in the metaverse.
Yeah, it's visual, right.
Yeah, and they can see, because it reminds them of the game. So yeah, people take their own paths. It all relates to Bitcoin.
That's
so
right.
Who cares, man? I mean, it's like it's like back in the day, somebody building a website. Like, well, why the fuck we talk about the internet so much? It's like, because
well, you get it, and I got the internet real early, right? That's my background, right? And it's like I could see a future. I didn't know what it would look like. I didn't know an iPhone would come out someday, but I just knew that everything would progress, right? It's iteration. It'll just grow and grow, just like Bitcoin. We're really early in Bitcoin. It's like being in 1999 in the internet when you think about it,
Yeah, true.
All right, last chapter of the book, you said Black business owners received less than 1% of the money invested by venture capitalists in 2017. Black women only got 0.2, 20 basis points of all startup capital from VCs. That's unbelievable. Not representative of the population. 13% of the population are Black. So that is whacked out, right? Have you dug into this? Like, what's going on here? Like, why is this even happening? Number one. And then in the last chapter, you talk about something called Blackchain. I want you to talk about that a little bit. Tell me what that was about.
Oh yeah. So first thing, most VCs are copiers. They are not original people. So they invest in companies that their friends have invested in or they see others have invested in. Most of the VC market, most of the money is from white and Asian investors. So when they follow each other, they end up investing in the same companies as each other. They go to college together. They know each other. They can get a quick million from a buddy at Stanford or my guy from Berkeley. That's just how it goes. The problem is, it's not giving the money away. It is the visibility. They don't even look at other companies that are.
They're not getting introductions because it's not part of the group.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even some of the comments that have been made that I know from friends personally, where they'll go in, they'll pitch, they'll say, hey, you have a great company, but we don't know if we can trust you with this amount of money. And it's like, what? Trust me with this amount of money?
Trust me?
Exactly. And it's usually always Black founders. And for some reason, the numbers reflect that. So even if you think, hey, we're not racist, we're not looking at them. It's just, we don't see Black
undertones of racism. Yeah,
exactly. And I was like, I mean, I don't care about microaggressions. I care about the money aspect. It's not translating into investment. So there's something there. And that's why you have funds that focus solely on Black and brown or whoever, different startups, just to get that visibility. Nobody's saying give us money. It's just that you don't even look this way. So I think that was the issue to start. And I think one way to solve that was with a project that I've started, Blackchain. Being able to have peer-to-peer loans using Bitcoin as either collateral or using Bitcoin as the loan mechanism. So right now, instead of it being its own standalone platform, we are working with the Digital Black Wall Street, which you may know is created by Naja and Hill Harper. We're working with them. One of the pillars of that app will be the ability to get a loan with that. So as a business, basically how it will work is if you looked at the first couple chapters, and as a business, you have 10 Bitcoins in your company treasury because you accepted it for payment, or you just started putting your money in that. At a certain point, you can say, hey, VCs or investment companies, they don't really do, investments for us. So, hey, I got 10 Bitcoins worth. I believe Bitcoin's value will be at a certain point where you can say, hey, I can take out $1 million cash loan on this 10 Bitcoin, get that loan to improve my business, but also not sell my Bitcoin, so it's not a tax liability. And then as a business, we get it back, and that can be peer to peer. You don't need a bank to do that. It could be a person with 10 Bitcoin that can loan it to you. You take out that process, and then you pay them back that way. So we're working on that mechanism. It's a little bit tricky simply because a lot of the tech side of it is built, but the regulation financial side hasn't even caught up to where we're already going. So we're holding off on it as far as releasing it. But to me, that solves pretty much all the issues in one. If you need strong businesses, which I think the Black community needs, this gives an incentive. If you need money once you get that business, this gives you incentive. And then once you have that money to build, can you keep that money and that wealth going? Bitcoin solves all of that all in one. And I think this platform would just be another part of that mechanism. Because hey, if you're as a business holding on to Bitcoin as your company treasury, I already think you won. I mean, just off the gate. But if there's some troubles and you need some cash flow somewhere along there, why wouldn't you have that option available? I think BlockFi and other companies have started it, but that's just the first iteration of what we'll see. I think it'll be much more.
And so you haven't launched Blackchain yet because of the compliance issues and all that kind of stuff? Okay.
And we're making it an open source. Yeah, we're making open source software, and we're actually using it with the digital Black Wall Street. So it'll be, we're working on licensing deals for it to be there exclusively, but we'll see.
I told you before we started the interview, I'm going to ask you this. I got a friend, he wrote a book called Bookmercial years ago. And what it is you write a book, and the book is basically like a commercial in some way that leads to like the last chapter. Your book basically was a book commercial in some ways. I understand the essence of it was really just to educate people for the most part, right? But you pointed out all these problems, and then you have the solution at the end, which is Blackchain, which isn't even available. So it's not like, it's out there. But it was interesting. It reminds me of like the prototypical, what he would describe as, I think it was Victor Chang, if I remember. He called it a book commercial. I was like, man, this is the epitome of a book commercial, right? Like I got to the end of the book and I was like, oh, there's a solution for all these problems. It's like awesome. Exactly. Yeah, it was great. It was well put together the way it was designed. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah. And I didn't do it. I never heard of that, but I do like the fact that anything that has a problem has a solution. And I hate complaining. Nobody likes sitting around complaining. So yeah, if there's problems that exist, as long as you come up with solutions, I'll hear you out. And that's all I wanted to put in the book, definitely.
All right, part of my podcast is that I ask people questions because I am going to write a book, and it's going to be based off of some of the commonalities and common personality characteristics about people. The one thing I found after doing like 20 some of these interviews, and I did 75 of them 10 years ago, they were all tech founders back then. I'm talking mostly Bitcoin people, but athletes and this and that. Most people have something to do with Bitcoin, not everybody. What I found, I had a recent medical thing, kind of an epiphany hits me, and it was like, I'm doing this the wrong way. I'm trying to understand what makes people successful. It's like I write out a blueprint, but I found there's a book that actually did that. It's called Relentless, right? By Tim Grover, right? He was the trainer for Kobe and Michael and stuff. But exactly. But at the end of the day, so it's not that original of an idea to try to talk to a bunch of successful people and say, well, what was the common traits, What I found is that in all of these, and I'm seeing it with you too, it's the people around you that make you successful, I think, right? It's who you surrounding yourself with, which is why my first question is always, who are the top 5 people in your life that you surround yourself with, right? Would you agree with that? Like, would you say that your success is a derivative of all the people that you've kind of surrounded yourself with from your childhood all the way up, and it kind of just forms who you are and your personality and characteristics?
Oh yeah, big believer in your network being just as much as your net worth, and I think that surrounding yourself with people early, that's your parents. That's why they tell you not to hang out with such and such. They tell you not to go over such and such totally. Because they realize that as well. It's about who you're around. And I mean, to take Jay-Z's quote, if everybody is good themselves, we can be each other's crutches. So if you individually can hold yourself accountable, can be sovereign and whatnot, any group that you get in is going to work because you can all be each other's crutches, pull each other up. And again, you said it before, you are the average of 5 people basically that you're around. People have been saying that to me since I was, since I can remember. So I've always tried to surround myself with that, no matter what industry. So definitely keep a good circle around you. And
based on the circle you told me, you got some amazing people you're surrounding yourself with, which is no question why you're at where you're at, because it wasn't just these famous people that you have now. Earlier, it was the professors, it was your mother, it was like all these other people in your life, right? So my hat's off to you on that. I've tried to do the same thing in my life. I always surrounded myself with people that I think that could help me, and then I could help them and that kind of thing. Let me ask you this though. Did you seek a pre-approval or kind of like affirmation from parents, maybe family, your wife or your girlfriend? I guess you're not married yet, but your girlfriend, like, or people you grew up with, like, were you ever like kind of like, oh, I want to make everybody proud, or like, is that something that was in your mind growing up?
Oh yeah, I always wanted to make everybody in my family proud, but I was always going to do it my way. So if your unhappiness came at that expense, so be it. But I still was going to make you proud, even though everybody in my family was wrong about Bitcoin. I was like, oh, I'm gonna make y'all proud. And then, of course, if I had listened to them, I'd probably working some regular job, just now getting around to it. So I still was going to do it my way. So yeah, that's really the only approval I care about is family and friends. Outside approval, I don't give a shit about these people. I got plenty of friends, plenty of family that love me, hundreds of people that I support and that support me. So yeah, I don't really care about anybody else's approval. As long as they are happy, I'm good.
And this goes to the other thing I talk about is usually highly successful people, like real high achievers, they're absolutely obsessive, right? If you look at like Kobe or Michael, if you look at like great athletes, it's the best way to look at it because it's easy to see what they're putting in and they get out because we can see their results, we see their accolades, their stats, and then you can see, wow, that guy works harder than everybody else, and he's the best. That's why he's the best. That's why Tom Brady's the best quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. I got to tell you, reading your book, I could see that you went down that rabbit hole really deep. By the way, there's no bottom to the rabbit hole, people. Yeah. Right? It's not there, right? Going down. It keeps growing, and there's new stuff to learn. And like when you started, like lightning wasn't out. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's always something new, right? So is that something that's new for you? Because we didn't talk about this, but you kind of briefly touched on it. We talked about it in a prior conversation we had, but like you're a great athlete in basketball and stuff. Why don't you talk about that? Like, did you put a lot of work in then? Did you develop your work ethic through sports and stuff like that? Where does that come from, that obsession?
Oh, man, I think it probably came from my father. He actually played in the NBA for a short period of time, but just being extremely competitive as well as having two brothers, that definitely helped. And like you said, the work that it takes to put in, being obsessive, my mom still to this day still thinks I'm crazy because she would be like, you don't sleep. You literally stay up with whatever you're working on. She's like, won't talk to me because she's like, I just know you zoned in, focused in. And even when I told her about Bitcoin, she was like, I don't know what it is, but I know you're going to do it. And she was like, that's really what you're going to do. I know you're going to do it because once you get serious about something, you can't convince me otherwise. So yeah, studying, going to work from, 8 a.m. to 6 and then staying up till 6 a.m. studying for like 3-4 years straight. That was me. Not going out, not partying, not buying a lot of stuff, delayed gratification. I was obsessed. I still am with Bitcoin. And like you said, still going down the rabbit hole. I just learned something new 2 days ago about Bitcoin. The circle chart that's been kind of floating around where they show the time lapse of how I've never seen that before. So like you're right, the rabbit hole never stops. So obsessed with it. And again, I've quelled it a little bit as far as saying it out loud, but I'm still just as obsessed as ever. And I think that does push you forward because when I look back and I tell people like, yeah, this is what I've done, I think my resume will stand up, to anybody in the industry.
I got two questions. Did you orange pill your parents? Had they bought Bitcoin?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say because it's always hardest the people closest to you. I got my parents eventually to do it too, but it's very, very difficult to get the people closest to you, right? I don't know why that is. It's strangers that like.
It got real easy when I moved to Beverly Hills. They were like, all right.
That's so true. Yeah, they're like, wait, he's onto something here.
Exactly. Yeah, this might be real.
He's on TV. Like at some point, obviously, you must have been able to orange pill at some point.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
So the other thing is we talk about that obsession. I think a lot of times when you have a lot of serious dedication and obsession, like you talked about, it puts a lot of pressure on personal relationships. Can you tell me, like friends you grew up with, things like that? Has there ever been anything like that? Or you grew up and you're just like you kind of have to keep going on your own path, and if they're not going to join at some point, you just got to move on in a way.
Oh yeah. I mean, especially my reputation in college, not through parties. Like I did everything in college. I had a regular job. I was throwing parties. I was doing events, house parties. I was doing everything. So to take that route and then to go a totally different one. People were still like, oh, you still want to hang out? You still want to party? And I'm sleeping in my car, in Raleigh, North Carolina, because I got a consultation at 8 a.m. and I can't drive back because I don't have enough gas. Like I'm on a totally different path. Like it was just so weird. But yeah, it's kind of hard. I didn't really lose any friends. We just were distant for a while. I did lose a girlfriend along the way to Bitcoin because I was obsessed. I worked too hard. It was whatever, but it wasn't any money on top of the work. You know what I mean? Not at that time. So it was like you're working really hard, but you're not seeing money come from it.
But you understood it, and they were like, "We're not making money. We'll just give up." And you're like, "No."
Yeah, and you're like, "No, you don't understand. This is the payoff for that." From that back then. So, I think it happens. A few friends, I'm sure, that were not jealous, but they kind of looked at it like, wow, you blew past me as far as like in your industry, the things you're doing. And I was the hot person coming out because I was supposed to be the lawyer, the blah, 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 da, da, da. But here I am looking at my TV and here's Bitcoin Zay talking about so, so some people have said that to me and I'm just like, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, but that wasn't the that wasn't the goal. That's just how it ends up. So it is how it is, but I'm just glad to be where I am.
I always like to say that somebody's success is determined by having the right opportunities, but then making the right choices, but a little bit of luck too. Do you believe in luck, or do you think that it's all skill? Or do you believe you've been a little bit lucky? I mean, your roommate came in, told you about Bitcoin. What if you didn't do that for another 3 years?
You definitely have to put a little sprinkle of luck on there. Yeah. I do believe that people that work hard get lucky. I mean, I would say the purest luck of the entire Bitcoin thing was, like you said, my friend telling me about it. Because Charles Schwab could have not had a meeting about Bitcoin that day, and he could have not came home and told me. But I think the biggest lucky thing was that Max Kaiser was the first person I saw. I mean,
yeah, that's lucky. Yeah,
that's about as lucky as you get, because there's people that have been in Bitcoin for years, never heard of them. But I was like, that's probably, if I had to choose somebody.
And he says, by the way, it's because he's not broadcast on television in the United States. People all over the world, he's got 30 million people watching his TV show, and we don't get to see him. It's unbelievable.
Exactly. That's what I said. All over the world, and in America, they don't let it come in. That's crazy. Oh yeah. But yeah, I think those are two like the lucky parts. But yeah, you got to have a little sprinkle of luck. And I've also been lucky. The swim swap could have went worse. Traveling and being in dangerous situations, almost being robbed, trying to buy Bitcoin before. I mean, little stuff could happen at any point. So always thankful, and got to sprinkle that on top along with the hard work.
So let me ask you last question. Last question here is, how much do you feel that your instincts and intuition have played in your success? And do you think that you learned that through your experiences, or you were kind of born with like your instincts and intuition innately?
I think that was something that was innate. But it can be developed based on your industry. So my instincts for Bitcoin things is, I think at this point, top notch, because of how long I've been in it and how long I've seen certain stuff play out. For example, like you have to see China ban it 10 times in order for them, when they get rid of miners, to just start laughing. You know what I mean? Like, oh, they get rid of miners. Like, yeah, this is just a play for them to plant themselves around the world, and Bitcoin's price is going to take a little dip, but it's not going to mean anything long term. And people will look at me, like on our show, I would say that, and they will ask questions. How do you know this? Even my business partner, he's like, how are you just not scared at all? And I'm like, I feel like my instincts are telling me this is bullshit. And it's just because I've done it so much. So, and I think intuition is great because in other aspects of life, I feel like it was there. But in Bitcoin, having that intuition can go far beyond technical and fundamental analysis. Just the intuition of, can you feel what's happening right now? Like I ask people that sometimes. Forget all this mumbo jumbo about Bitcoin. Can you feel what's happening in the world right now? Everything at once is the everything bubble rising at the same time. If you can't feel that right now, I can't say we have the same level of intuition. Like I can feel it. Just something big is coming. And
it feels like it, bro. Yeah.
I mean, if you can't feel it at this point, if it's just like you're just floating through life, more power to you. I wish I was that. I wish I had never
oblivious, right?
Exactly. I wish I could be that oblivious, but I can't. I can just feel what's coming, and I think both of those things have helped me in my career.
Zay, thank you so much. We did this interview once before, technical issue. We had to stop it. Here we are again. I really appreciate you coming on. We didn't talk about your comedic background. You got to send me like a tape or something like that, some like footage on YouTube. You got to have something.
I got something from college. I mean,
I would love to see it.
Yeah, I just did stand up in college for free beer and girls. It was just fun.
Oh, I love it.
It was a great way to tell some jokes. I was on the radio, so it was just like something we do after the radio show. Go there, go to the comedy club, do some jokes. I actually traveled for a little bit for a few years, but I didn't love it. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I didn't want to be, you got to be broke for a decade and live in shitty hotels, and you got to really love being a comedian. And I respect the art form too much to just play around with it, because when you make it as a comedian, they've done some stuff. So shout out.
First of all, I mean, people don't realize, I mean, you did it. I've never done it, right? First of all, you got to get over the fear to stand up in front of people and tell jokes, right? And then not have shown the fear, because everybody's nervous, right? You have no nerves. You can't hear the shakiness in their voice. You don't see their lips trembling. Like all of this, people don't take they have no appreciation for a stand-up comic in front of a room of like 500 people or 200 people. Small rooms are even worse, by the way. Larger rooms probably easier because you can't see them, the lights, right? You're in like a small comedy club. That's not easy, man. And then you got to be so on point with the delivery of the words. Like, I mean, it's not easy, man. When you see Kevin Hart killing it, dude, that dude is talented. He memorized that. He's done that 1,000,000 times in practice. I mean, I just, so much respect for comedians. It's really hard.
Yeah, that's my favorite art form. Stand up. I can watch stand up all day. Yeah, shout out to all the stand up comedians. Definitely the hardest profession. And to me, stand up people are some of the smartest people on earth. So
very smart. Yeah. High emotional intelligence.
Yeah, definitely. And they're unfiltered. You can listen to them. They may make it funny, but at the end of the day, if you listen to it, it's like, oh yeah, that is right. They just don't have the education behind it, but it's all good.
No doubt. Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show. Like I said, here we have it. Isaiah Jackson, Zay, Bitcoin evangelist, early adopter, OG. If you want to find him, just go on Fox News or CNBC. He's on TV all the time. And everybody got to check out the book, Bitcoin and Black America. Go buy it. Amazing book. You get a new one coming out soon, actually, don't you?
Yep.
When's your new one coming?
Dropping the end of this month. Like I said, trying to get it shipped.
Get me a signed copy. I want one.
Oh yeah, I got you. Yeah, like I said, gotta get it to you, brother.
All right. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you.